Hello everyone, welcome back to your favorite Mid9M channel. If you're ready for our next adventure, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, and share this video. Now, let's dive right into it. Story 1. Take a seat, John. Why don't you tell us what happened from the beginning? The detective motioned you towards the chair with a hand gesture accompanied by his harrowing eyes. I don't remember. Well, how about you have a sip of water, take a deep breath and make yourself remember. The detective stated. He definitely wasn't a nice cop. It started coming back. It took you no time to fall in love with her. From day one you knew she was the girl of your dreams. The first person you felt you could truly connect with, soul to soul. She was a great listener and didn't judge you on any of your imperfections. She actually liked them, and you believed her. You had met her 4 months ago, down by the train tracks. It's the place you used to go to escape your problems when you were having a bad day. The place had a certain feel to it that allowed you to just forget about everything for a while. She went there for the same reasons as you. You still remembered the first time you met her and how it wasn't even intimidating when you walked over and said hello, despite her utter beauty of blonde hair and perfect pale skin. In fact, she always joked that it was her that broke the ice with you, but it didn't matter. You both had each other now, and that's all that you cared about. You were grateful and very lucky. For a few brief moments you actually felt happy again, as your vision twirled in memories of all those times you spent together, until the vivid memories faded as quickly as they had formed, and you were sucked back into the cruel reality of what was happening. Sitting in the cold and lonely interrogation room, scared out of your mind. The day police arrived at your door to bring you in for questioning over her death shook your world like no other. That's why you were having so much trouble voicing anything to the detectives who were standing over you intimidatingly. Stuttering and mumbling, you still couldn't believe it, especially when they mentioned she died 4 months ago. Story 2. Sean's house was covered from head to toe in family photographs, some from family retreats to Ireland, others showing lost family relatives. Most of these photographs would include Sean in them, so it was only natural that he would look at them from time to time. However, one day he noticed something rather strange about the pictures. His mother seemed to have a red face in all of the photos. Rather shocked by this, he immediately ran downstairs to ask if anyone had done something to the pictures. They all answered no, even his mother, whom was quite worried. Later that day, Sean's mother went to the hospital due to horrific third-degree burns caused by a grill catching fire for an unknown reason. Sean's father decided to stay at the hospital that night and thought it best to send Sean home with his big brother Thomas and little sister Maria. As Sean walked into the house, he caught a glance of the family photograph in which he noticed the change to his mother's face and found that Maria was not in the picture. He ran upstairs to her bedroom only to find that she was nowhere to be seen. Alarmed by these strange events, Sean called the police. Sean informed them that his sister had been kidnapped and that someone was in his house, possibly vandalizing his family's belongings. The phone immediately went dead, and as Sean went to put the phone down, he caught a glimpse of an animal in the corner of his eye. He rushed out of the safety of his room to go and find the beast. But what he found was far worse. The mangled bodies of his family lie in the corridor in front of his room, their faces frozen in a state that almost makes him vomit. And then it struck him. All the photographs had been removed from the walls, except for one which was a picture of Sean, with his face scribbled out. The next day, his 2 best friends went to visit him, because he was not answering his phone and was not at school all week. As they arrived, they noticed that the door had been left open, so they let themselves in and were never seen again. Story 3. In the small town of Stull, Kansas, there once stood an old one-room chapel on top of a hill surrounded by graves. Beside the church was a cellar that was very difficult to find, as its doors had grass grown upon them. In front of a church was a great tree that was always bare. None of the town's members could recall ever having seen a leaf upon its branches. In the town's earliest years, well before the Civil War, there were several farming families that lived there. The minister's daughter had fallen madly in love with a boy from nearby, but had her heart broken when that young man was discovered to have impregnated a certain flirtatious townsgirl. The two were married, and all the while the reverend's daughter saw them happy together, and her hatred brewed until after 9 months of painful endurance, that despise boiled over. Shortly after the young couple's child was born, the minister's daughter went to their house. They greeted her cheerfully but noticed, all too late, how she eyed the child bloodthirstily. She slit the throats of those two who'd made her life so miserable, and then dragged their bodies, along with the newborn child, up the hill to the church. She put the bodies in the cellar and left the baby there, between their bodies, to starve to death. She locked the cellar shut and hung herself on the tree in front of the church. The bodies in the cellar were not found for 3 weeks. From that day on, leaves never grew on that tree. If you walk the graveyard late at night, you can just hear the sound of a baby's chilling cry. The townspeople burnt down the tree many years ago in the hopes of putting the minister's daughter's spirit to rest. And more recently, the church collapsed onto itself, burying the already difficult to find cellar. Many have looked for its doors, but the few who have found them and ventured beneath its depths have seldom returned, with the exception of a few who came back to the sunlight after 3 weeks beneath, starved nearly to death and covered in blood that was not their own. Story 4. In a dilapidated office building somewhere in Connecticut is one of the few elevators in the Western world that has a button labeled 13 amongst its choices of floors. If you enter after midnight, crawling through the loosely boarded up window on the south side of the building, you will find the elevator doors standing open, with soft fluorescent lighting and muzak spilling from it. Even though nothing else in the whole of the building seems to have power. You can, if you choose, pick through the debris of raucous teenaged parties and office meetings past. The path seems to be mostly cleared through the broken, dirty, stained and vintage office furniture and burned out joints, cigarettes and crushed beer cans, all the way to the light in the door. All of the buttons work in the elevator and will take you to its designated floor, despite the creaking of the cables, though there seems to be a layer of grime on their plastic covers. All but the button labeled 13, which seems to glow brightly. No one's quite sure if that one goes to the 13th floor. But there's a story about a group of high school teenagers who had a party after their prom there, in the early 90s. A dare was made, and 4 of them piled into the rickety elevator, taking it to the 13th floor. When they came back down again, they were pale and shaking, but all of them swore they'd seen nothing more than a normal office floor, covered in dust and shadows. 2 of them died in an accident on the car ride home that night. Another, 3 weeks later, took a bottle of pills from the medicine cabinet, climbed into a hot bath, slit her wrists and dropped her hairdryer into the water with her. The 4th disappeared from the face of the planet 2 months later. None of them said anything of what they'd seen on the 13th level of the building, and when asked, would only ascertain loudly, if necessary, that nothing had happened. But you can, if you so choose, crawl in through the window and see for yourself.